EMS Ad Hoc Committee of May 15th to order. So, comments and suggestions from the community? Suzanne, why don't you introduce yourself? Oh, come up to the podium and state your name and address. Yes.
I'm Suzanne Van Mealy, and I'm from the town of Troy, and I live on Cooley Trail, 393 Cooley Trail. So I'll be the representative from Troy from this point on.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah. All right. Comments and suggestions from the community? Anybody else that wants to say anything? Comments and suggestions from EMS staff? Come on up, state your name and address.
So I'm Greg Carola. I actually don't live in Hudson, but I'm one of your casual medics.
Okay.
So I was like the opportunity. So first, I wanted to thank you all for doing this. I know we get tied up in the politics and all these things that are going on, but you've actually taken a lot of your own time to make things here right. So first, thank you for that. Second, I wanted to echo some of the things that Steve DeCoste talked about a couple weeks ago, which are a need for really two plans. I absolutely love that you're working on a strategic plan because, first of all, if we had one, we wouldn't be in some of these dilemmas that we're in. But then second, we need to have a plan to get from now until you can implement whatever that strategic plan might be. Mm-hmm. And I think we're struggling a lot in the wages arena. So for those of you that, let's give a quick review and you can chop me off if you like, but prior to January 1st of last year, we operated under what I'll call a community model, right? Where we had a paramedic that was in a chase vehicle, pretty free to move about the community. EMTs were on call and they could come into the station. And so that put St. Croix EMS in a very, very unique position because you were attracting applicants that were looking for something a little different than their day job in a lot of cases, right? So most of us, if you look at the casual list, we've got jobs in the metro or other places, and we were able to come over here. So we're here for all the right things and for all the right reasons. And you were pulling from a very unique workforce for that reason. So there was sort of that carrot and stick model there where the carrot was you had a lot of freedom and you didn't have to use the stick a lot because people really liked it and they really enjoyed what they were doing here. And I think to some degree that's still true. But if I remember correctly, January 2nd of 2018, we basically got a memo that said effective January 1st, 2018, right? We were moving to a new model, which I'll call the metro model, where everybody's in-house. So you've got, and the goal of that model, as I understand it, is to have 2 ambulances, both staffed by a paramedic and an EMT 24/7. Is that correct? But with that, there wasn't really any movement in wages. So St. Croix, Hudson, really never led the pack in wages, but it wasn't a huge issue because there was so much freedom that was involved with that. Now today, this is no different than a metro service, right? The job responsibilities are identical. Does everybody agree with that? Essentially, you come in, you check your shift at the beginning, right? And you're here the entire time, and you take whatever calls come along. And just like the metro, sometimes you have really busy shifts, sometimes they're a little bit slower shifts, but the job responsibilities are exactly the same thing. So what happened that day, and we probably just didn't think the whole thing through, but it seems like we moved into this full-time model without any real value proposition analysis at all. If there was any, it didn't consider how it would change the workforce strategy. So previously, again, you were recruiting from an experienced workforce that was looking for something different and a lot of freedom while they were here. And now you put yourself right up there on the board with the Twin Cities-based services that are actively hiring and actively recruiting. The catch is that they're doing that at about double the wages that you get in the Twin Cities plus benefits. So I'm not hoping to resolve this today, but I think in terms of your immediate strategy, it's got to be looked at in the sense of how are we going to first retain staff, and then how are we going to recruit staff in the future? Because you now have entered this metro playing field without entering these sort of metro wages, if you will. So a lot of the frustration, at least for me and a lot on the employee side, is that we haven't really gotten a clear answer to what we're worth. And it's a tough question because we've operated under this volunteer model with this volunteer budget for a very long time. And there were a lot of things obviously that happened with the potential takeover and how things worked out. But it was kind of the goal for the last couple of years has been, let's just try to get through this. Let's just try to get through this. And I think we need to know a point when we're actually going to define what it is that, what our end game is from a wage standpoint. And if it's going to be competitive with the metro wages. Because if it is, that's wonderful. There's some really unique opportunities here, and this is a wonderful community to work in and to serve. But if it isn't, and the goal is to simply have a metro-based service that's based on volunteer wages, that tells us something if we're going to work in this career model. And I think it makes it really difficult from a recruitment standpoint, because you're essentially looking for somebody who's highly skilled, highly qualified, super motivated, but unwilling to drive an extra 20 minutes to double their income. So the questions that I hope you can bring forward, and again, I don't know that it's going to happen tonight, but the questions I think you need to bring forward are, first of all, what is this worth? What's a paramedic worth? What's an EMT worth? And is that the same thing as it is in the metro? Now, you may come up with an answer of no. But if you do, it'd be good if we had an explanation for what that is. Why are we being valued substantially less than we would be on the other side of the river? Not saying there's not a reason, just saying that I don't understand it at this point. Second, with the full-time model, it needs to include EMTs. Because there's definitely a strategy to get full-time paramedics up to speed, which is great. And I think you just hired a couple. But when we talk about 0.6 FTEs, or 24 hours a week, 0.6 is assumed to be a benefited position in the Twin Cities. And here, there's no 0.6. There's the opportunity to work 24 hours a week. And during that shift, you can earn exactly $288. So I realize the intention was to have some sort of a regular staffing, but I think it's a little bit of a slap to people that are looking to do this as a career, because it's not actually a 0.6. It's just a way of filling a shift a week. So you have a couple of questions to look at, and I'm going to send some stuff around here that shows the people and how long they've been here and whatnot. But I think you need to look at who's here and what they're worth to you to retain them, first of all. Because you probably know there's a good chunk of staff that are seeking other employment, some out of frustration, but some simply out of need and financial need. And then second, what the EMT staff is worth, because I'm not sure if we're looking for a full-time model again, it's hard for me to understand why the EMTs don't deserve any sort of a benefit package. So, I mean, to wrap that up, I think the decision to move from this, community-based model into this full-time model was a $500,000 to $1 million decision that had no funding put to support it. And so the model's not going to be sustainable, the new model, the metro model, unless you fund it. And so that needs to be coming. Now, the question, and some of my peers asked this, is this going to just push somebody to go somewhere else, or to have somebody take over, to look at a partnership? And I think, you talked a lot about viability, sustainability, and reliability, right? That's the three goals of this group. And that might be the three goals of a partnership with another group. But my message is, it doesn't matter if you're paying the paramedics and the EMT staff, or if you're hired somebody else to come in and help manage it. This is still what EMTs and paramedics are earning. So now that we've moved to this career model, we need to very quickly move into a pay that supports that career model. And then in the meantime, this is just something to consider, perhaps we've had some struggles getting staff meetings out there, and, communication, and, who's saying what at City Hall, and I'm not blaming anybody, but since this ad hoc committee is meeting monthly anyway, would it be reasonable to have a half an hour or an hour staff meeting right before, this committee meeting, and that would give a chance for, the council to hear some staff, so kind of a low-key way for maybe you all to hear what's actually going on from a staff standpoint, find out how you can support it, and those types of things, as opposed to just kind of letting this fester and fester and fester. And one thing I'll say, having met with several of you and, you know, some others from the council, you've been wonderful, and you're trying to do all the right things, but I think it would benefit everybody to have a little bit of FaceTime with you and actually see that you're just doing this because you think it's the right thing to do. I don't think there's a hidden agenda. I think, you know, there's some things that are a mess, they need to get fixed, but I think in terms of moving forward in the meantime, it would be good for other people to get to see that, and it you know, it's like maybe a half an hour time commitment or something. I don't really be extreme, so. There you go, I said that all in one breath. So if we're on board with the $1 million ask, I also have some thoughts on global warming I could share.
It's not on the agenda.
Yeah. Let me just send these around as I'm standing up here. 2, 3. Or would you rather have these by email? The documentation, you want it by?
I'd like to see a hard copy of it.
Yeah, send it around.
6.
Joyce, can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of anyone, not necessarily of you, and I missed your name, I'm sorry.
Greg.
Greg?
I'm the shy, quiet guy.
Yeah, I could tell.
So-
Thanks, Greg.
Carola. What is that? Carola. Yeah, Carola.
I wasn't around in January 2017 and wasn't aware that decision was made, though, so I appreciate your history. And my question is, why did we do that?
Why did we change the model?
Yeah,
Well, Brandon can address that.
It was going more towards reliability.
okay.
It wasn't reliable to just run with
Just
volunteers.
on calling people in and having volunteers and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's my kind of follow-up question, if I can ask it, and it may just be a lack of understanding, but what was the value proposition discussion around that and around how that would impact employee relations and recruitment and all, and kind of the workforce strategy?
There was some proposed wage increases along the line there with that. It did come in a little bit less than we originally were looking at, though. With
So
the
you
st-
proposed
well,
some,
with the step scale that came into play, that's also something new. There is a step scale now. So where that top end is actually kind of where we were proposing at the time. So there was increases in there.
so you proposed substantially higher wages and it was turned
It
down?
was, Brenda, do you recall exactly what the number was there? We were a dollar or two over where we were at
Well,
before the step scale.
when we went out, the last 2 years that I've been here, I've done salary surveys on this side of the river. I've also included comparable communities on the other side, on the east side. And we were average, with the increases that we had, we're average with western Wisconsin. And so there was, if we added the metro, then we realized we needed to do it for all positions in the city. And as we can recall too, when we started with a new model because we felt that the old model was unreliable, Brandon's proposal was 9 full-time paramedics and 9 full-time EMTs. And we could not afford it, our partners could not afford it, and so we went through several scenarios and we got to this staged plan where we added 1 full-time paramedic this year, and we'll continue to add a full-time paramedic the next 4 years.
You know, where I think the struggle is, and it's hard, because I sympathize with the position, because the city is constrained by a number of things, you know, including partners and whatnot. The applicants and the staff that might be seeking other employment face none of those constraints. So it's a tough spot for everybody, but it comes down to, you know, do we want to be competitive in this market or not? And there's, I can understand if the answer is no. I just think we need clarity around, you know, what are the options, and that's what we haven't had. It's kind of been, it's coming. So if this is as good as it gets, I think, you know, we may need to just be told that, and we have to choose if we can accept it or not. But it's the not knowing again. That's the struggle.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else from the EMS staff?
The only thing that I wanted to mention, and I didn't get a copy of Greg's packet, so I don't know, Greg, did the emails that we discussed, you and I discussed offline yesterday about some of the emails from other agencies, does your packet include those emails?
Yeah, actually, here, I can give you one, but it's, yeah, the back page is actually a recruitment email. So this one happens to be from Health East. basically a $2,500 hiring bonus, and then you can see what's attached to it, as far as the pay scale goes. But, yeah, and that's actually a smaller number. I mean, I've seen stuff, 5,000 fairly regularly, and there's some, if you're willing to outstate, that are much higher than that.
And that's the only thing I wanted to mention at me being at the meeting tonight as a staff member. We've discussed this the last couple of weeks, and Greg certainly put things a lot more eloquently than I would. All I wanted to bring up was the fact that when you talk about wages, and for a long time, and I'm just talking about me personally, I don't know if I can speak to the rest of the staff, but Greg talked about our previous model, and while there might not have been reliability that the city maybe perhaps wanted, I think we had a lot more buy-in from staff because of the freedom. And I left a position where I made more money to come up to a place where I was already working part-time because I saw the benefit to full-time employment here with having some more freedom. So that changed after the first of the year. And then in addition to that, we as a committee, or you guys as a committee, and I guess just me as a bystander on that committee or an advisor to that committee, we've been talking since, I don't remember when we started meeting initially, last fall, I think it was, about things that need to happen going forward. And I feel like, this is something that I am echoing from the staff, I think we continue to talk about the same things month to month to month. And the one word I will take out of Greg's soliloquy is the word quickly. This is something that needs to be remedied quickly. If we're going to continue to move forward with the staffing model that we have, that's fine. But we're not, staffing-wise, we're not where we need to be. Mm-hmm. So I agree with Greg that there needs to be a two-model system where we're headed and what we can do to staff trucks today. And we've discussed that amongst ourselves. We've discussed that with Brandon. I've discussed it personally with a couple of you offline, just kind of expressing concern. So where we're headed in the model that the city has agreed on, the model that Brandon has agreed upon, I don't think anybody disagrees that that isn't something that might be beneficial down the road, but we can't cover those shifts today. And in the meantime, and the emails that I was referencing, in the meantime, and I'm not on Indeed or any other job website looking for jobs, but I get emails, not daily, but weekly from Alina, Health East, multiple agencies from the Metro offering me $2,000 to $5,000 sign-on bonuses regularly from agencies I'm not looking to work for. And what I've heard said about our position here as full-time city employees from other city employees is, yeah, but you have a great benefit package. I don't think there's anybody that can disagree that the city of Hudson has a really great benefit package. Benefits don't pay my rent. So it's to the point where some of the full-time medics, and Brandon just hired a couple more, but he's going to be losing a couple more shortly. So wages aren't going to be resolved at this meeting tonight, and they probably won't be resolved in the next few months, but we keep coming back, at least in my opinion, and again, other staff members, and if these guys want to jump in too, because they're in the audience, but the things that we see are, again, the things we've been talking about the last several months, you know, potential mergers, how can we staff better, how can we boost morale? That's kind of the answer right there for me, it's never been about a specific dollar amount, but now it's getting to the point where we need to do something one way or another.
Well, I think pretty much as far as wages moving upward, you won't see that this year because the budget went in. As we all know, I worked for government for many years. So once that budget goes in, it's set for them to say to you or whoever, okay, your position, we're going to raise your wage by $5 an hour, or $2. It's not going to happen. I mean, pretty much once they do a budget, at least it always was with the county where I worked. It was, you know, unless there was some emergency thing that had to get fixed or something, and they went into a different fund. But so that's pretty much set there. And I agree there are some issues, but the way I look at it right now, myself, I can't speak for anybody else, I know there's issues. We all know that. I knew that coming in. But I still have a great passion for this service. I always have. And I see growing pains, definitely. But I'm still here because I'm willing to see it to fruition. I agree, it can't be 5 years down the road. It's something we need to keep moving forward with, and I understand that. But I also understand we're in a position after last summer with trying to figure things out in the right way. And I agree there needs to be more communication as to what's on the table for next year, 6 months, whatever the case may be. And I understand if you're full-time, I understand the concerns there too. And maybe I'm gonna be kicked right out the door for saying this, but when people come here full-time, they know what the hired wage was. And I personally, when I used to look for jobs, was if the wage wasn't gonna be more than what I was making, I'm gonna stay where I am unless I have to get out. But if I go in and I'm told you're gonna make this much per hour, I'm not in a year gonna expect a $5 an hour raise. That's just me personally, and it's not against anybody in this room. That's just how I think. Maybe it's bad thinking, I don't know. But,
But since you're not a full-time employee, Pam, you're not aware of what we were offered.
I think, there's just some things that grow, and I think there's some issues here that people just keep bringing round and round, and it gets other people upset when they're trying to move forward. So I think it's kind of a whole group issue, not, so that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the staff that wants to say anything? Okay. All right. Discussion and possible action on ad hoc committee minutes, and that's supposed to be 4/10/18.
Version has that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved. Okay, so discussion and possible action on work groups. So staffing. Anything new?
Brandon, go ahead.
All right, we've filled the 2 open full-time positions. But as Joe said, there are full-timers that are looking, so just to keep that on the radar. We also have a couple of the new EMTs being let off orientation, and we have a list that are going to be brought on.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I have a request in for a closed session that I was told we can't do.
Yes,
So I need to make sure that that gets on the next meeting. There's no,
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
thank you.
And then we should probably make sure that Brenda can be here for that closed session. Do you agree?
Yeah, I want Chief there too, if that's possible.
Mhm. Okay. Brenda? Paul has requested a closed session for our next meeting to discuss wages.
No.
Or what? Oh,
To discuss,
other things.
yeah.
Okay. So do we need Brenda to be there? Or the chief? Do we need?
I need Chief there.
What about Devin, the human
I
resources
need
manager?
Devin there.
Okay.
I think we should talk to Devin about that, about having a closed session of this group to talk about wages, because I
This
believe that
this
the
isn't about wages.
commission. Oh, it's not about wages?
No.
Okay.
Wages.
Okay,
Okay,
I misunderstood.
okay, yeah, because
Mhm.
that's the
Have a reason for it.
commission.
Yes,
We have to have a reason
yeah.
for the closed
Yes.
session.
A
have to
reason for
post.
closed session, I want some, to discuss some of the policies and procedures that may or may not be getting done, and I'm not one to question or beat someone down on in a
Yeah.
public forum.
Okay.
I want it to be respectful, and I want the conversation to be amongst us.
That would, I think what I'm hearing is a review of personnel. We do have to notice it properly.
Someone help me. We got a lawyer back there. What do you want me to say?
I think you'd like to meet with some key players from this group without it being a public meeting,
Right.
to discuss whatever it is, staffing
Okay.
or personnel or whatever it is that you're,
Are you talking about the policy and procedure manual?
No, I am not.
Could you reach out
'Cause
to
that
me
needs to get
tomorrow,
done, too.
and we can,
I'll call you
Just-
tomorrow.
thank you.
Okay.
government is so weird.
It's totally.
It's difficult to get used to. Anything more on the staffing work group? Facilities?
No, Brandon, talk about what you guys got going on Friday so people can get that out there. I'm sorry, what you have going on Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday, we're doing a open house. It's gonna be in conjunction with National EMS Week, which is the following week. It's from 11 to 2 across the street at the ambulance garage. There'll be equipment tours, blood pressure checks, and hot dogs and chips and stuff for lunch.
Great.
And then my question, Chief, do we have any holes in the schedule, or have we had any?
Yeah, we do. We're still working to fill those as we fill positions.
We haven't had any uncovered shifts though, correct?
Any days with zero coverage? No.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Facilities work group? Jim? Yes.
Hey, Brandon has the up-to-date information on what's going on there.
So we're still going through the contract phase with 5 Bugles to get everything solidified to start the actual design work. It's been back and forth with city attorney and 5 Bugles for their editing.
Mhm.
So hopefully we'll have an answer soon.
Okay, good. All right, John's not here for the finance work group, education work group, so, Brandon did get, a newspaper, or information in the newspaper I saw that St. Croix EMS invites public to celebrate EMS week, so.
I want to make sure to give Joanne credit for that one. That's her work.
Thank you, Joanne. Were you planning to send in, or did you send anything more in?
I wasn't able to get the
Okay.
deadline, no.
Yeah, and I haven't been able to get anything more, to the paper. Things have come up. What about you, Bill? Have you worked on anything?
No.
Or- Okay,
Need a topic.
okay, yeah, so, any ideas from those here on what you'd like to see on in the newspaper for education? Any topics?
I don't know if it's worth mentioning but the completion of the critical care program,
Oh, yeah.
upgrades. I mean, our service is already at that position, but you've upgraded more staff.
And I kind of want to do that in conjunction with an upgrade of the monitors. We actually received funding from the nonprofit to upgrade 2 of our monitors. We just had 2 of our paramedics complete critical care training, so we'll try to do a press release on that.
Oh, that would be good.
I think it'd be good to bring them both together.
Mm-hmm, okay. So you'll do the press release, or Joanne will be working with you on that?
Was that Joe and
And Jen,
Mm-hmm.
Jen?
Yep.
Joe, congratulations, good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jen Kerner, if you're watching, good job.
Mhm. Okay, and, yeah, Bill and I will work together to figure out something for the next column. All right. Discussion and possible action on strategic plan. Were you able to get a hold of,
Nothing to report.
so the consultant hasn't been getting back to you at all?
Apparently our wires are crossed somewhere.
Okay,
I'll take a different route.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Can I take a picture of that?
Hold on. It's a good idea.
All right, discussion and possible action on survey tied to election.
Ask that again, please. Or discussion and possible action.
So are we still interested in doing a survey of the community during the fall elections?
I am.
Okay, have you,
I drafted some
oh, you did?
potential questions.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't bring enough copies for everybody. We can share. These are the kinds of things that I'm interested in.
Okay, why don't you read the questions? So that
This is,
those were in the,
for
were
those of you who
watching.
weren't around when we had this conversation before, as we've discussed several times, we think there are some fundamental issues that the community has to decide. I mean, last summer, we decided pretty clearly that we didn't want to merge with Lakeview. But there are still some fundamental issues. What should the structure be? How should it be funded? And so on. And so our idea was to simply ask voters in Hudson and in the service area some questions at the election. And the model I was thinking of is a couple of times in the past 5 or 6 years, we've put a question on the ballot in the county, should St. Croix County support a nursing home? And got a very clear answer, and the result partly of that is that we still have a nursing home. So these are 3 potential questions off the top of my head. Should Hudson's emergency medical services be funded entirely by user fees, or partly by user fees, partly by taxpayers? Number 2, today, Hudson's emergency medical services are supported by a mix of taxpayer funds and user fees, persons who use the ambulance and any insurance they might have, Should the EMS be funded entirely by user fees? You catch a theme here. 3, the state of Wisconsin requires cities like Hudson to maintain an ambulance service that can transport sick or injured residents safely. For many years, the Hudson EMS has gone beyond state requirements by providing crucial medical services in addition to transportation, for instance, treatment for heart attacks. Should Hudson continue to provide these expanded services, yes or no?
And question 2 is kind of leading.
Yes? Too leading.
Yeah.
How so? It's factual.
It is factual.
I think we're trying to, it's a critical answer.
Should EMS be funded entirely by user fees? In anyone's world, you're gonna wanna go, yeah, but it's not practical. It's.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. How do you keep it transparent that way then?
Yeah, and the problem with asking that question like that, the easy answer is yes, but what's the cost?
And when people are at a voting booth, do you think they're gonna think about that, or are they gonna go with their
Yep.
first instinct?
And I
If
think,
you're my age, you're going to think about that.
But I think, like he's saying, if I get right, Paul, is that asking that question, people in a voting booth at the top of their head are gonna go, yes, whoever uses it should pay for it and nobody else
Yeah.
should.
Right.
Which sounds great in your head, but they're not gonna realize that it's gonna be more than $500.
Well, and they don't understand the entire payment model, that you've got Medicaid and Medicare paying way too low, which if it's gonna be paid for entirely by user fees, then the other 40% are going to have to pay
70% of it, in
Yeah.
essence, in the end.
large amounts. So, and that's where we're struggling, is how much should be paid for through the tax base versus how much should be paid for by the
Right.
end user.
Right.
Is there a way to build that factual information into the question, or would you not want to do that?
I think
That's-
we have to.
Well, that's partly why we've been writing columns for the newspaper.
Yes.
That's not a very effective delivery
Could
method.
another question be, or maybe I didn't understand question 1, are you open to a financial support for EMS, a combination of budget and user fees? Which it is now, but in an essence, but we're at a point now where, that might have to be adjusted, maybe more equally distributed, I don't know.
Would you like the EMS community-owned or privately owned?
Well, and that's, when we were going through the issues last summer, when people were trying to decide where we were going and what the potentials were, what I simply asked people is, do you support a publicly funded ambulance service? That was the simplest way I could put it. And then the answer I got from people that already think their taxes are too high is, well, yes, I would still continue to pay for it, knowing that you're gonna be.
And most people I talked to, as like Joe said, I will pay more.
Say that again, Joe.
Do you support a publicly funded EMS system?
Excellent. Publicly owned and funded.
Or could you,
And then
would
back
you
to
wanna
your-
say majoritarily, cause we still do bill?
Well, I think we could just make it a very simplistic question,
True.
because as you're standing in the voting booth, I don't think you're gonna read a lot into it. But then, I don't remember if it was question 1 or question 2 that talks about user fee versus tax-based. If there's a way to put in, and what is our, how much of tax subsidy do we use, like 16% or 20% or something? I mean, so get an accurate number, so it's a factual statement, and then say, would you support a mix of user fee versus publicly funded? Currently, you're publicly funding, or the public is funding EMS at 20%. Versus fire EMS, or fire or police, that's 100%. And make sure we have those numbers accurate and factual, but at least people then could know, well, what am I currently paying without it having to be a very long
Right.
question.
I think we should be putting it in terms of how much tax money based on a particularly priced home. So, for example, if you're in a, what's the average home price in this area? But, or would, you know, something like 250,000 or 200,000 would probably be something that people could probably
Wrap their head
if
around.
you
You have the
Yeah.
number there, cause they seem to like that, like when you vote for school things, when it all comes down to it, they want you to tell them, if I have a $200,000 home, it's gonna cost this much for my taxes per year, and so in their head, they can kind of figure, well, my home's worth 300, so mine would be about,
Yeah, and add 50% on it.
maybe. That seems to be what people want, is the bottom line dollar,
Mhm.
what it's gonna cost.
I think one of the, if you look at the last school board election, is they spent a lot of time listening to people's concerns and addressing the issues and providing an education about, call it education, facts, information about what it was gonna take, about what the needs were, what the gaps were. So they did an inordinate amount of work to make that successful, but they'd had several failures. I don't think
Yeah.
we don't want another failure. So part of this is going to be a very clear message, more than the columns in the newspaper.
Mhm.
I think it's gonna, to me, there's gonna have to be some direct communication with everybody whose opinion we're asking. And this isn't necessarily binding. No, this is, I don't think it's binding at all, unless we wrote it that way, but it's, it's just seeking information. But you could get the wrong answer. Because my take is, everybody I've talked to, I say, how much more, this is what you're paying, using the per capita model. Would you be willing to pay another $5? In your household, that's 15, 20, and the answer was absolutely yes. There was not a soul that disagreed with that weren't willing to pay more money to maintain the level of service that we have. So, but getting that through the budget process and with all the conflicts we have and limitations that we have, we end up compromising, and we don't get all the way there.
And the careful thing you gotta look at is, are you in an echo chamber? The people that you're asking,
Mhm.
are they like-minded? Like, I surround myself with people that think like me, no one else. So it does me no good to ask them, because it doesn't do any good, it's just an echo.
Yeah, you already know
But
the
you
answer.
need some sort of forum where you get a bunch of people in here that I don't even know, I've never seen before, and ask them.
Mhm.
I mean, and the only way you're gonna do that is if you say, EMS will be sold next Wednesday. That's the only way they're gonna be here. And they'll show up,
Or if
It
it's
will.
in the ballot.
huh?
If it's in the ballot.
Yeah, if it's in the
everybody's
ballot,
gonna
you're
see
right.
it.
If it's in the ballot, you're right, and I think that's a good start, but
Yeah.
once again, now we're waiting till November, what?
Right.
November.
Mhm.
Why not now? Like, it's just, I wish, I don't have the answers for this stuff. I wish I did. I wish it was just an easy little Facebook post for Hudson people, and they all answered it. You know, 12, 13, 14,000 that are here and growing, and
Even with voting, you don't always get a good cross-section
You don't.
because a lot of people unfortunately don't vote.
Yes.
More than we like to think, don't vote.
I just was looking at question 3, and I would actually take that one off. Going backwards is very difficult to actually do, because once you've provided a level, they require you to maintain it, unless you can prove like a large hardship or something like that that would
Yeah.
prevent you from it. And on top of it, we already own all that equipment anyways, so it would be going to waste.
The reason I put that in there is because I have heard people say, wow, we should only do what the state requires.
Well, we're doing that right now because we've advanced to that level, so
Well, yeah,
we have to be there now.
Do the minimum that the state
So-
requires. I got it,
Yep.
I understand your
Yep.
point.
And then,
We've raised the level that we have to meet,
Right.
is what you're saying.
And then my other concern is getting this on the ballot. When it comes through, that's actually going to be towards the end. Actually, we'll probably be already past our budget hearing,
Mhm.
I believe.
Oh, is that right?
So that might be an issue there.
Yeah, you know, we need to have a solid plan in place by August at the very latest, because we've got, with the way that the budget works, is that, so you have to submit things when, beginning of September?
Earlier the better. I've already started looking at.
Mm-hmm. And so, and then the other municipalities need to be able to analyze the information as well. So,
And wasn't there a date of like September that North Hudson or the township had
Yes.
set forth that they
Yes.
needed answers by
yes.
on other issues?
Mm-hmm. And, so, in the next area, items for discussion only, we'll talk about where we're going from here, and, you know, where we're at and where we're going.
I definitely like the idea of getting public opinion. It's great.
Mhm.
But I think we need to make some decisions long before
Yeah. I
the
take
ballot
your
rolls
point.
around.
yeah.
Well, I think that this really hinges on having a consultant who's going to be helping us through this process, and we haven't made any progress on getting that consultant. So how do we, and if we're not going to,
I'll make that happen.
Well, is the consultant getting paid the same as we are? That's probably why he's not calling back.
We haven't gotten that discussion, so.
no, we're expecting that we're gonna have to pay the consultant.
Yep.
But that's what we'd like to know, is how much we're gonna have to pay that consultant. That's an important question.
And identify a funding source for that as
And
well.
identify a funding source,
What'd you
yes.
say?
Identify a funding source for the
Mhm.
consultant.
Mhm.
That wasn't part of our budget this year, so.
Um, So, where should we go with this?
I like the information the lawyer gave. I've seen some of that stuff before. I've had a talk with him at my house. He knows what he's talking about.
Mhm.
And I can relay that stuff to the companies that I've been part of. We can't lose any medics that we have
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
And Chief just said you brought on two or you're bringing on two?
Bring on to start date June 4th for one of them. And the other one's currently an employee, so.
And Joe's right, it doesn't matter what the benefit package is if you can't pay rent. I get it, Joe.
Mhm.
I get it. It's not too often I don't have the answer. I don't have it right now.
And I know we've moved on from that section of the agenda. I just wanted to throw it. Nobody was here asking for a raise. We just wanted you to have the information of what other agencies are doing.
Right, no, I know you're not doing that. I know that what you're doing, well, not you. I know what is being thrown at us is, hey, if we have a higher wage, more people are gonna wanna work here, you're not gonna have a hard time retaining the staff that we have and getting additional new staff and trained staff. And then it'll be easier to run Brandon's, not your model, but you know, the work model that you've put into place here. I get that. The election thing, I like that. We're a couple months behind that. We should have had that on the last election in April, but
We couldn't.
yeah, we couldn't. We couldn't.
So I think we need to find a better method for community
Can
engagement.
we do this?
There is a primary in August.
Oh,
Can we put a
we-
questionnaire out at this thing?
sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Just a little like postcard with a couple check mark questions on it?
And a
I
little,
think my knee-jerk opinion is, absolutely, I think it'd be easy, it's quick, it's painless,
Goes
but
back
it
to
goes
an
back to the
echo
echo chamber. The people that show up to EMS fund,
Okay,
they already support us.
that's
But-
okay, I think that's good.
Okay, no, I agree, but just as long as we're all on the same page, that's who's gonna be
I
there.
think that's gonna reinforce the message that the city received last summer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're gonna probably have to do, I would assume like a postage paid card or something, because,
Just have a box that,
Put it on
for
the spot.
people to put it in right there on the spot.
oh, you want them to do, okay, so you're
Yeah, you
talking
just
just
have it-
simple, like
Yeah,
one
you
or
just have the
two
postcards
questions.
right there and it'll let, if someone wants to grab it.
Or one sheet
Oh,
of
I
paper.
get
And
you, I'm sorry, I
is it-
misunderstood.
No, yeah, I don't know how government works. Can you take their information and use it so they can get on email list for this kind of stuff?
Or if it's a petition format where your name, where you live, and what your thought is. Not a specific petition, but in that format.
No, I think it would be a good idea to collect information from everybody with their name, their address, their phone number, or their email address.
You can do that?
We can ask them for it.
You can ask them, they don't have to fill it out, everything's voluntary as far as filling it out, but I think that,
So say there's 3 questions on it.
so what would the questions be?
Like, one of them is your question. I think another question should just be a blank, like, how much do you think you pay for EMS service on your taxes? Just to see where people, their mindset is.
And to
Because
that end, we can maybe come up with a, even if it's just poster board or something like that, providing some of the educational component.
Yeah, because I think you're gonna see a roller coaster of
This is
numbers.
what we-
Someone's gonna say, well, I think it's
On your total
$400.
tax bill for the city of Hudson, what do you think you pay for E EMS?
Because I don't know if we did it at the
No, not total
fundraiser,
tax bill.
because I wasn't there, but we had talked about labeling, like
Yeah.
literally labeling how much this
Yeah.
monitor costs, how much this
Because
costs.
we're-
You gotta keep it simple. People like their stuff in their own little world. How much do you think on your tax statement did you pay for EMS services out of your own pocket? They really don't care what we collected as a group. They wanna know what they paid.
And we are gonna have, the trifold thing Josh put together, which has like staff information, what it costs to buy a new ambulance, what it costs to equip it.
Yeah,
And
that's,
there's gonna be
We're
a
gonna
lot
have
of,
price tags on monitors and the power cots, just to let people know that you can't go to a garage sale and buy a $200 cot, or
Yep.
something like
there's
that.
gonna be a lot of
Just
education
to, so
stuff.
they understand when they're saying, where does this money go? Well, this is where it goes.
is anyone volunteering for choking demonstration or something? Joel?
Are you volunteering? I would resuscitate you, Paul.
I know you would. You did in Denver.
So, okay, so,
What, 3 questions. One is Joe's question, I think, and you guys gotta vote on it.
Which is what?
Okay, I'll say
Do you
it.
support a community-based EMS system?
Do you support a publicly supported
Publicly
EMS service?
Publicly
Publicly
funded and
supported.
supported EMS, yeah.
So that'd be one question. No
Mhm.
one's writing it down. She's writing it down.
she's running it down.
Next question, how much do you think you were taxed for last year's, help me out with this, last year's EMS service?
How much on your tax
On the-
statement
yeah.
did you pay for EMS? Yeah.
Your 2017, that'll make it pretty clear.
What was question number 1 that you had, Bill? Could you just repeat it?
Should Hudson's EMS be funded entirely by user fees or partly by user fees, partly by taxpayers?
Is that what my question was?
No, your question's better.
Yeah,
I think we should have something on there. How much do you think I don't even know if you wanna even touch base on
No.
that.
No,
No.
it's very
I think just
confusing.
those two would
Yeah.
be,
Mhm.
would be good.
And then a blank for, would you like to be on our email list, or it would be helpful to have your information for
Well, here's a way we could reword one of the questions that I proposed. The average cost for an ambulance run is what, $1,300, $1,200?
Roughly, yeah.
Should that fee be paid entirely by users, or partly by users, partly by taxpayers? 'Cause that makes it a little more real.
Well, you might wanna word it maybe if it was entirely paid by, you could just take like your run and then say, if, in that question, say if it paid entirely by user fee, the cost would go to this, cause it would go up if you weren't getting
Right.
any.
Mm,
And then say if it's part this and part this, it would be in this wing or this approximate.
Yeah, the current funding model is the reason that the rates are low is because there's that subsidy from the tax base, so.
See, that question
that would
before
go up.
October, when I was asked to be on this, I wouldn't have understood it and I would have just bypassed it. You guys overestimate how much the general public thinks about or understands how this stuff is funded.
Yeah, I agree.
Until they
That's
get a
one
big
reason why I
ambulance
wanted to
bill.
put it that way.
Yeah,
I had no idea that I was ever gonna have to pay for an ambulance at all,
right?
if I called one, until I started serving on this committee. I never thought about it. And I suspect that's true of a lot of people.
Yeah, you just
So
gotta
if we
get it.
tell them that if you call an ambulance, somebody's gonna bill you for $1,200, that's an eye-opener.
I would think if you want to ask the question about whether you want to be totally funded by users, you would have to have that number.
Yeah,
What, you take our 2017 data, and you got all this Medicare, Medicaid stuff where they didn't pay for it, and say, okay, the ones that paid for it, how much is it gonna cost them? And it's 40% of the people, of the calls are paying for the service, or minus a little bit for transports, or something like that. You know, I'm not sure I've got all the numbers correct. Brenda could, I see her kind of saying, yeah, you know, it's,
I know that the ad hoc committee was formed to, I think the goal was to be self-sufficient, financially feasible. I
No.
think that we've come to the realization that that's not gonna happen. We can't charge enough in user fees, and not charge tax dollars. The model that we're under, we can't do that. And so I don't think it's a fair question for them. But the reason that we went through this discussion was we knew that the amount that the taxpayers were gonna have to pay was going to go up. We couldn't recover the amount that we needed through increasing our fees. And so that's why we went down this path. So I don't think that we could ever charge 100% user fees for the ambulance. There's always gonna be some kind of tax that's on it.
but most
In
people don't.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, and that's right, most people don't understand that. They really don't have an idea how much of, and how it's going to get worse rather than better.
Correct.
And to be respectful, I disagree with your statement that it can't be self-funding, because there's a reason why entrepreneurs want to buy this service, because they can make it self-sufficient.
If we had other activities,
Yeah,
so a hospital has other activities,
right, but
So-
if we had a full staff and we missed no transfers because we had a full staff. Chief, Joe, you guys know us more than anyone, Josh, answer it. Can it be self-sustained?
It would be an additional about 200,000 if we took everything, so we'd still be short.
And getting shorter,
And why?
and getting shorter.
I haven't run the numbers, I haven't seen the numbers, I've just talked to people that work for similarly sized services that said if you're fully staffed, you'd at least be able to break even and not use, but I'm not the finance guy, that'd be a John question or a Brandon question, but what I do know is that if you are an ambulance service that only went by user fees and didn't use a tax subsidy, then your user fee would have to be significantly higher, that's how you operate your
Yeah, like
business.
1,600.
So somebody needs to know what those numbers are. I don't know the answer, I'm just posing the question, so.
and what I would ask Joe is, are those communities in Wisconsin or Minnesota?
The last person I talked to was a EMS manager that manages ambulances on both sides of the river.
On both sides, okay.
Yep.
I'm sure, I don't know, I'm sure it's gotta be more than $1,200
Lawyer
that they
wants to
bill
know.
out.
I think the issue is coverage, because Hudson is constrained in that it needs to have 2 ambulances.
Okay, come up to the
in
microphone,
order-
please.
Oh, sorry. I think the issue is coverage in the sense that Hudson's constrained in the sense that you have to have 2 ambulances if you're ever going to take a transfer. Because that's a Wisconsin law, where these self-sustaining services, which I do agree it's possible, but we don't have a truck that's floating around somewhere else doing work and then gonna come and just help with the transfer. We don't have 5 basic life support ambulances that can come in and pick up transfers that, if we get behind. So it's a different model where I think what the community talked about, with all the hearings and whatnot, was that they wanted to make sure the emergency service was all available. And then we realized to be sustainable, we also had to do transfers. And so in order to do that, it's gonna require some sort of a subsidy with those trucks only being in Hudson, which is where I like some of the comments you made at other meetings about, is there a partnership with somebody around here to share some of those transfers and that responsibility? But at 1,500-ish calls a year, 2,000-ish calls a year, and the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements where they are, there's not any way that you're going to be completely self-sustaining with 2 trucks only operating in Hudson and only taking transfers out of Hudson Hospital.
So, getting back to the survey here. All right. What is the goal for doing this survey? Is it to educate the public, or is it to get some information back, or both?
First of all, it's an attempt to be transparent where no one's thinking that things are happening behind the scenes. And it's just gathering information. You take the information you get, then you make a decision.
Now, if you want to look at it as, we just want to find out what people think and how close to reality they are, and which then defines our education model, what we need to
Okay.
cross. Then, that's one approach. But if we want to try to educate them at the same time,
Maybe just,
certainly a different.
like Paul said, 2 simple questions, just find out the education level of people. So like you said, we can maybe tell at that time where we have to go with public education about the service. Like, if we still don't have enough out there, then that's something we have to look at going forward seriously, so that everybody's on the same page. Because most people, I honestly think we're like fire and police. Well, fire does some bill and township, but I'm just saying, basically, you go to their house, you provide the service, you leave. You don't get all this information for a report so they can get billed. It's kind of, I think there's just a lot of lack of education on the differences between the different public safety entities. And that creates, rumors or misinformation and people thinking it's free, and
I don't think you're gonna get the answers out of those 2 questions that you guys are thinking you're gonna get.
Josh didn't even know you were here. First time you talked all night.
What do you think?
I just don't, if you're looking for education level, I guarantee you can go grab the next person who walks out front of the building and says, hey, do you want to field service first?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And they'll walk away.
And then maybe, I don't know, throw this out there, maybe the open house isn't the place, because what we kind of decided to do the open house was for, because with last summer and everything, is just our first step in something we hope keeps going, to reach out to the community so they can come and see who we are, what we work with every day in the back of those ambulances, and just some general information on, the service. But I'm thinking, maybe do we even want to do a survey there, because we kind of, like I said, is our first reach out to the community to show them, hey, we're glad you supported us, and going forward, here's kind of what we're about as an early reach out to the public. So, I'm kind of wondering, now that I think about it, if we want to do that, because
I don't think we can miss an opportunity to get.
a lot of people are going to have their kids there, so I don't know.
This is our education piece.
Yep. I think we use the open house as an opportunity to educate, and then we briefly ask 2 questions on their way out the door, whether it's a card or a survey or whatever.
How about if we did this? I mean, I appreciate what you've been saying, and as I've been thinking about this, I think this is more of an education piece than a data gathering piece. How about if we had a little card that asked 2 questions? How much does an average Hudson EMS ambulance call cost? Question 2, how much of that amount does the user pay? How much do taxpayers pay? And then once they write in their answers, tell them the answers, or have the answers up on a poster.
Right, but the ambulance bill is above and beyond what they're already paying in their per capita. Ambulance bill's got nothing to do with it.
I don't understand.
Say it one more time, Josh, I didn't hear you.
The ambulance bill is above and beyond what they're already paying for per capita, so they have a per capita rate, that's what they're paying for the ambulance service, it's got nothing to do with the bill, it's just for services rendered. I
So
mean, it's not
the
like-
per capita rate is the taxpayer rate. It's what the taxpayers pay,
I
right?
think you need to leave the ambulance bill out of there, you need to ask how much are you paying, you know, for an ambulance, you know,
I want to
have
ask
an
both
ambulance
things. I
service.
want to ask if people know what I didn't know, that if I call an ambulance, I'm going to get a bill for the service.
See, I don't know how you didn't know that. It's, because I know it's
Called
not
an
free.
ambulance.
No, you've never called, okay,
Yeah.
see, yeah.
I never thought about it. I mean, I thought we supported it the same way you do fire department and police
Gotcha.
department and so on.
We have people ask us quite often, am I gonna be billed for this?
Yeah.
Yes, how much? That's not my department.
Yeah, I get what you're saying now. You've never called an ambulance. I
Yeah.
got what you're saying now.
Yeah.
I think that there'd be a really unique way for us to display that information and make, whether you make a game out of it or whatever, and all that, that's a conversation the EMS staff can have outside of this meeting. I don't think you have to decide it now. I think those questions are important. I think there's a way to make a model or a game or a display out of it, just so people can sit there and guess and then get the answer. But to have data collected, if you're gonna do a survey of any kind, it has to be a yes or no question. It can't be a, how much do you think, because nobody's gonna write anything down.
How about multiple choice? Where it's like.
Or a
circle
multiple
one.
choice.
'Cause I
You
get
have
what
to
he's
make it
saying.
simple.
Something he learned. Something I learned is how inexpensive it is on our taxes.
Right.
If you had asked me last August how much I paid, and I would have been in like the $350, $400 range. That's where I would have been.
Yep. But that's.
What was it last year?
11
$11
per resident.
No, 14.
14?
per person.
Still.
Well,
That-
we're gonna have
That could be
poster
displayed on the
board
wall
with
of
some
the
stuff if
garage
you want.
versus it being a survey.
But if it's a survey, if you said, tell me what you think.
I think
you're
if you
gonna
ask people
see
to
that
tell you what they think,
Morons like me
they're gonna-
saying
they're
$300,
gonna throw the-
$400.
Look at this, I'm going back to the staff surveys, which you had access to.
Yeah, and you're
Unless-
gonna gain support by more people going, it's less than $20.
I'm not talking about the data you're collecting, I'm talking about the actual pulling of the lever. Nobody wants to do any more work than they have to. You have to keep these questions as simple as possible, and they have to be a yes or no. And we proved that with the staff survey. If you ask them to expand on anything, any survey you fill out in your life, if you can click yes or no, you're going to. If it says, did you enjoy this class? Yes or no? If yes, please explain, and nobody ever explains. That's what I'm getting at. It doesn't matter what the question
Yeah.
is,
See what you're
you have to make it as simple as possible. The
We're
other.
gonna have a poster board, we could just put it on there as education, and then if you wanna do a couple yes or no, just saying, you know, we're gonna do like cost of do that stuff, but then if you want, we could put on there average ambulance bill, in ambulance bill, put an amount, and then say, cost per household resident per year.
But I think if we talk
It's
about
just
that,
simple, but it kinda gets their,
if we talk about the things we could do at the open house, we'd be here all night, so I think we
Yeah.
should hone in on the questions.
So
Well, the open house is Saturday, so.
well, some of it. we're
is there
gonna be
somebody who
working
wants to work with Pam on that?
On what?
Or Brandon on some type of a survey? Okay, so that's not gonna work.
I got a bunch of other stuff
Okay.
I'm doing to get ready,
Yeah,
so.
okay, so that's not gonna work. Okay, so,
I'll work on the marketing. I already sent it to Agave. It's going on the sign tonight, and I'll plaster it
Good.
all over social media.
okay, thank you.
I think,
I'll take it with
my
cheese
opinion,
curds
the
or
original two questions are your question and my question, but we started at the beginning of the conversation with are important to ask, and then the other information as far as breaking up ambulance bills to how much they cost, that's something we can just display.
Yeah, I think that's more of an education piece.
That's an educational piece. But your original question and my original question,
I know your original question, should the EMS be publicly owned and funded or a private service, right? Which was mine.
And then yours was something about a percentage of each or a combination of each.
Oh, okay.
Mine was just, should EMS be publicly
Your
funded?
question is simple, but someone like him a year ago would have been misleading. And I don't wanna say that out loud, but it's the truth, right? Do you get it? Cause he would have gotten, he called the EMS, gotten a bill, say, wait, it's publicly funded, why am I getting a bill?
Yeah.
I see what he's saying now, I didn't understand it until he explained it.
Should
Why
EMS
you're
be
gonna-
paid for by taxpayers? Yes or no?
Say it one more time.
Should EMS be paid for by taxpayers? Yes or no?
Partly
And the
paid.
second question could be, or should EMS be partially paid for by taxpayers and partially by the people that use the service? Or the end user, or user fee, or however you want to label it?
Then the third question is, should it be paid totally by the users?
Sure.
But that's
I
not
mean-
an option.
You
It's
can't-
all-
Well, no, but we
It's
kind of know the
physical.
answer to it, but we can ask people what they think.
Oh, okay.
We're just getting public opinion. We know some of the answers, but
What you're getting is where people are at, not what they want.
Right.
It's where they're at, it's what they know.
they're not voting on it. They're just
Yeah.
telling us what they think.
Yeah, that's true.
So you gotta be careful about what you expect to get out of this, because
Yep.
if you think, what you're gonna get is says, oh my God,
Yeah.
you don't understand.
You're not in that echo chamber.
And then explaining to them what they're actually paying for and what tax, then that can be the display.
I think that we really need to do the education piece, and I don't know that we're going to get anything from surveying people right now,
It's because
because,
we overcomplicated it. We should have just kept it with simple questions. I like your price tag idea thing. I think
Yeah,
that's
we're
good.
gonna be doing that, that's already on the, I'm gonna be working on that the next 3 days, so.
okay.
I'm sure you're gonna be doing demonstrations.
Yep.
You have all the dive team stuff out there?
We'll have everything out there.
Good.
Yep.
We're gonna be doing some monitoring.
The,
things, right?
Stuff's not free.
The
People need to see that.
CPR anytime kits will be available for people to sign out as well. We can take it home, learn CPR at home.
That's a new thing
So
we're offering.
it's all gonna be
so I
available
think
down
that'll
there.
be a good thing for people too, to see that we have it.
Not to bring fire into us. They're gonna have the fire trucks out too and stuff like that, or not?
No, it's just,
You get their own open house.
yep,
Huh?
They're gonna have their own open house.
yeah,
Are they?
Yeah.
Well, they always do their
theirs in
pancake and-
October.
yeah, pancake breakfast.
Yeah.
No, we're doing this in conjunction with National EMS Week to, recognize the staff as well, so.
Mhm. Well, thank you for all the work that you're doing on that. So, let's keep looking at the election question.
Okay.
Is
the easiest way to
August
get
is the,
August is the
primary.
primary a possibility?
Yes. It's gonna have low turnout because it's a primary, but we'd get some information back.
It's gonna be really hard to come up with a question for this.
It is. It's such a complicated issue and people don't understand it.
You need to do it as a town hall meeting.
Yes.
Instead, skip the survey or make a survey that you can hand out at the town hall meeting.
Well, if you
Do a
look
town hall
at,
meeting, let people come and ask their questions.
if you look at
Let
the
'em
way
ask.
that the school district did things, they had a series of meetings to gather information from the public, and that's what we're gonna need to be able to do.
And that's the reason I think that it passed this time, is because they learned after the 2 failures that you have to, number one, tell the public the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't have grandeur visions up here, like 2 swimming pools and all. You have to kind of, and that's what people told them. Keep it at a level we can accept,
Mm-hmm.
not over.
Yeah, but then the company that was the consultant, they did a bunch of surveys to find out exactly how much the public would be willing to spend on this, things like that. So those are the kinds of things that's where we really need a consultant.
How did they do their surveys?
Well, they had some written surveys that you could do online or send or mail back.
The problem is you get the passionate people on both sides. You don't get the Joe Blows in the middle.
All right, so,
Yeah, I think maybe the town hall meeting type thing might be a good way. I mean, have more than one so people can pick when they wanna come.
yes.
And then have, and let them ask questions. Don't let it get into a political thing or an election thing or anything, but just strictly provide the information to them, the education, and then say, now, does anybody have any questions on what we've provided, or what, maybe something we missed that you don't and kind of go from there.
So if we do a presentation and then you have someone stand up at the podium and
Yeah.
field questions.
Yeah,
But my final comment, and then I'll be done making comments, but my final comment is we're back to square one. Nobody wanted to wait for November to the election to use Bill's question. Now we have an opportunity to do this on Saturday, and now we want to delay it again, is that what I'm hearing?
No, I wanna do it on Saturday.
Are we doing it on Saturday? I thought Joyce just said that you didn't think that was the appropriate place to do a survey.
No, we don't have a question. It got
That- yeah.
overcomplicated.
Right, but we do have a couple questions.
Well, I disagree at the moment. Give me
Okay.
your question.
The question that we
Yeah,
have.
just, don't mock me, just tell me,
No,
what's your
no,
question?
It was, do you support a publicly owned and funded ambulance service?
Now, see, I agreed with that question,
Mhm.
100%, until new information came in from my man over here that had no idea before this committee started that you still get a bill.
Right. I'm
And it's
just,
like, I'm sympathetic to it. I'm like, how many people are out there that have never called an ambulance? I've been fortunate enough to be in a car accident, motorcycle accident, stuff like that, so I know you get a bill. But
no,
good
I'm just asking what we decided.
Yeah,
So that's what I heard was that we were
that's what
gonna,
I'm saying. We need a question that can't be torn apart, that's gluten-free and everything, that someone's gonna answer, and it's not gonna be slapped back on our face 6 months from now going, but the question said. So, Joe, help me get a question for this Saturday then. A question that we can all agree on.
but before I started this conversation, what were we talking about? Doing some sort of a town hall, educational something? When's that gonna be?
Oh, I just think the town hall thing it's kind of, I just heard about it tonight, 5 minutes ago. I think it's a good idea. I don't think it'd be a good idea to stick Brandon up there to field questions, because
No.
he's
No.
not the talker like someone like you is.
Nobody wants
You
to
can
hear from
field the
me.
questions. But let's get back to the,
But we have to have a plan before we can have a town hall. 'Cause we've got to be able to tell the public what it is that we're proposing before we can ask them to support it.
but we can come up with a question for Saturday. It's harmless. It
Okay.
really is.
All right? Would you like to do that?
No.
Okay. So do we have somebody who's going to,
Lawyer, you got a question? I know you got an opinion.
Yeah, I'll throw another way of looking at the question. It could be phrased, did you know this fact? Yes or no?
Right.
That's a way of doing
An
some
excellent way to do it,
education and some evaluation if people, will answer honestly.
then you're finding out they don't know.
How about this? You fill it out. I don't even know if you can even bring this up without getting poked fun at. You fill it out, you put your name and everything on the bottom of it, and you get a drawing for a gift card. It gives people incentive. It feels like they're doing something.
If you'll provide feedback, we will draw a name.
Well, if you fill it out,
Yeah.
it's like, you don't even have to answer the question if you don't want it. You don't want to, you don't want to corner someone on a question. They want to feel like they have a chance at the drawing, but the questions are there in case they will fill it out.
So, but don't ask them in that case, don't ask them what their opinion is.
Ask what their opinion is, but if they don't write
But
it
if
down.
you're saying, you're asking them to take a stand,
I don't
as
have that
opposed to
one.
what they,
I say we
what-
just yes
if you
or
ask it
no.
in a way as, what do you know? And still, maybe.
Yes or no? Did you know you get billed for an ambulance? Yes or no?
We already know the answer to that question though, because he said it right there. He doesn't know.
He didn't know that.
But I don't
See,
know how
then we're
unique
for
that
sure
is.
backing that up, that the majority of people didn't know.
But
So you
see,
know
you
where
do-
we have to go.
It's an education thing, and, some,
Right, but the problem-
how do you answer that then?
But the problem is, the only bill that the people are seeing is after their insurance has already paid it. So they might be getting a $200 bill. Do they know that the real bill was $2,500?
So that's one of the questions. And then after they answer that, you can give them a card with the right answers.
But no one knows how their insurance works.
Well, you don't talk about, you can't talk about insurance,
Yeah.
because it's just all over the place.
But if I had an EMS run, I have no idea what my wife's, thank God for her job, would pay for insurance. I have no idea. Not a clue.
If
I
we're,
don't know what mine would pay. I think pretty good, but
Okay.
I'm not
Brandon?
sure.
if we're looking to try to find out what kind of knowledge is out there, maybe leave it as an open question of, what did you learn today that you didn't know prior to coming to this event? Did you,
No, I
Because
get-
we're gonna have stuff up there, different things and showing different things the service has available, so.
Yeah, if you ask them to write something, then you better have a big table, and a lot of space for people to
But I think
You-
that's,
you just wanna
I think that's a
circle-
great question.
circle and answer, or it's gotta be simple, or they're not gonna.
Well, I'm not so sure, Jim. I think that's a neat
Their-
question,
their ability to
especially
respond.
if we followed it up with, what would you still like to know? I think
How about this? If you guys are willing to do this, if somebody will do a couple questions, I mean, I would do it, but I've got a list of stuff that Joanne and I and a couple other people need to get done by Saturday. So, give the task to somebody to come up with two very simple questions and take it and just do it, cause I don't think spending any more time here tonight trying to
Yeah.
figure it is gonna work. And trust the fact that they will figure out what to put down.
Here's our volunteer.
So, what I'm getting is that you guys wanna ask the the question that Joe came up with, right? Sorry, I'm
Sorta,
Josh
yeah.
Hubmer, by the way.
Not to be rude, but could you give your name, please, for the
Josh Hubmer.
audience?
I just did, sorry, I'm Josh Hubmer, and I work with St. Croix EMS, I don't live in the city of Hudson. If you're wanting to do that, ask that question, but you're worried that people don't know the answer, like you said, have the first question be, did you know this? Yes or no, you're answering that, you're giving them all that information, then ask that question. They're gonna get that answer in the first question, then you're gonna ask the question that you're wanting to ask.
So why don't we just do that, just to get something out there? You gotta start somewhere.
But the main thing is what are you looking at gaining from these questions?
This is what I'm trying to find out. I'm gonna find out if we get 100 postcards back, or 1,000, or 5. That's my number one.
If they're doing
Thing
it
I'm gonna
right
look at.
there, you should
Yeah,
get all back.
still, that's what I wanna see. If it's 1,000, yeah, that's good. If it's 25, okay, that way I'm getting information's not gonna work. When you got hot dogs, everything there, free blood pressure, all the equipment out there. Cause if you do the, what did you learn today, everyone's gonna say the same thing. I had no idea that, the bed costs $6,000. They're gonna look at equipment and go, I had no idea it costs that much. That's what a normal guy like me sees. That costs how much? That's crazy. That's what we see.
Okay, we gotta keep moving on this, so what, we have an action item,
I'll be happy to keep working on this.
okay?
I'm concerned that we're not gonna get agreement on what the question should be. Everybody willing, if Joyce and Jim and I work on this and crank something up?
We
No?
can't.
We can't, okay.
No.
How about if you just come up with those questions?
I think that you should just come up with a question and,
Okay. Then what?
run it past Brandon.
Run it past Brandon, email it to Joanne, and we'll make a little,
Run it by 2 or 3 of your friends that aren't familiar with any of this. Just see what they say. See how.
You could send it to Joanne, and she could send it out to the group,
Okay,
and she could,
okay, and I'm gonna try and make it as simple as I can,
okay.
like,
Yeah.
here are 3 choices. This block of questions, something like that,
Okay,
because we've talked about this enough, I
okay,
think.
yes. All right, let's move on.
Okay, I'll
So-
do that by noon tomorrow, Joanne, how's that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Good job.
And then can you handle the rest of the logistics, whatever we have to do to print and so on? Okay, okay.
Okay, number 8, EMS items for discussion only.
all right, So tonight Brenda's here to address in-house billing.
Okay.
We talked about that.
Brendan had asked that I come and talk about in-house billing versus having a company do it. And we've interviewed 3 weeks ago 3 firms to do billing on our behalf, and that's what we've done here at the City of Hudson in the past. I have done in-house billing in the past, but that was many years ago. It was before mandatory write-offs for Medicare. It was before some pretty complicated procedures. And so some of the advantages of having an outside billing firm, in my mind, is the current billing provider that we have has 36 full-time and 7 part-time staff. They're able to answer patient calls from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, where if we had one person here doing the billing, they'd be here from 8 till 4:30. And so after hours, they wouldn't be available if they were on vacation, if they were on sick, if they were at training. You'd have to have a backup, or those calls wouldn't be answered. And then the provider that we have right now is bilingual. They have staff of that 36 that can speak Hmong, Spanish, Latino, Russian, and Hebrew. They're able to handle all info requests from attorneys, patients, and insurance. So if you had one billing person here, they might not be as familiar with some of the attorney calls or some of that other stuff, and so then you'd have to escalate it to another staff member here at the city. You'd have to have somebody supervising that employee, and so if calls here escalated, where I come from, they escalated to me. And so one time I could be talking to a resident about a question about a water bill, but the next day they might call me about confidential information on an ambulance bill. It makes that role a little difficult of who's answering it. And so it's nice to have that separation with a professional firm. You know, Medicare and Medicaid billings right now, they're very technical. And if you don't have the expertise to do it, and you know, just having one person on staff doing that, they might not have 100% of that expertise. We are opening ourselves up to liability for, you know, Medicare or Medicaid fraud, or, you know, some of those audits that we as a city should, you know, kind of caution.
Can I ask Brenda, can I ask a
Yes.
question too? In addition to opening ourselves up to a liability, if we misbilled something that was to be billed for Medicare, if we misbilled it, they can take away all of our reimbursements, correct?
Correct.
I can make it even more simple. I went to the was it 2 interviews I was in? I was blown away by the incredible detail of these billing companies and how much they do take on. I don't even think it's open for discussion to have in-house billing after going to those interviews.
Thank you. So, and
I
did
was the
look-
one that was for in-house billing, and Joe,
And I
you
was
remember
too.
me
I was
yelling at
too.
you about
And
it.
then I learned about it too, and
And
there's way
when
too much liability.
And I humbled myself, went to the meeting, and I was like, I'm an idiot.
Thank you for being honest.
And there really isn't cost savings. When I took salary plus benefits, I added software, there's not even cost savings there. We would have to, you know, I thought, could we hire 2 full-time billers and then contract out for another city? But then what if they aren't wanting our services in another year? Then we've got somebody on staff. So that's what I've got, unless you have any other questions.
What is the total cost for billing then, for what we've been paying?
By going out for proposals this year, our current billing company came back with a lower price. And so we'll see savings of about $10,000 over last year. Last year, we paid that service $88,000.
You get a lot with it.
And, you know, part of that $88,000 is $22,000 in collection agency fees.
Okay.
We're not gonna, if we brought it in-house, we would still be paying those fees.
All right, so with savings, we'd be at about 78,000.
78,000.
And
we can't.
with
pay
salary and benefits, we.
We're
yeah,
over that.
We'd be over that. And I was thinking, one of the thoughts that I had was, we would need more than one person, because you'd have to have a backup for when that person is
Correct.
not available.
Yeah, or training, because we'd
Mhm.
want, we'd want a certified biller, so there's gonna be training involved, so,
Okay,
okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I think the one takeaway from this is, with all of our contractual agreements, I think we should, send them out every so often periodically, because we were able to get quite a
Yes.
substantial savings by doing
Mhm.
this.
Yes. Okay,
When you say periodically, every year, every 2 years?
I wouldn't,
What's a reasonable?
I'd stretch out to maybe 3.
mhm.
So,
Otherwise, they get too complacent, I think.
right.
Do we just have 1-year contracts with them, or
Ours is a 2-year contract.
2-year?
So,
Okay.
Good luck on that
Good.
question.
What's that?
I said, good luck on those questions. Thank you.
We'll see the result.
Okay, so, Jim and I visited, Lakes Region EMS to get information on how a nonprofit operates and gather more information. We were looking at all the different models and seeing, so our goal was to see their facilities and, just see how they do things. And, one of the things that they have is the economies of scale. So for example, they've got a full-time mechanic who is managing their fleet. So we saw a lot of things, and Jim, feel free to jump in here and, what you learned. They've got in-house training, they've got in-house billing. They have a daily restocking from a central stock room, which I think is, good for keeping inventory up to date. So there was a lot to learn there. And I don't know that, how much of these we can apply right away, but, one of the things, though, that when we were talking about just, what our goals are, what came out was, Aaron, the director?
Yeah, here's copies of,
Oh, okay, you got it, so,
yeah,
okay.
pass this out.
Mhm.
It's enough for the audience as well. We had probably an hour and a half discussion about EMS in general, why they work, how they operate, just to get a much better understanding of a larger organization, and whose some of their clients have faced the same issues that we've faced. But the neat thing was, as Joyce was saying, is that at the end, Aaron says, well, here's what I hear you saying that you want. And it was really good to have someone listen to us and who's got the experience, and to kind of put it in words, and, just what we're asking for, other than supreme care. That's a given, is that we are gonna get the best possible health care, medical care that we can, that we can get. That's a given. So, but the rest of it is about operationally and philosophically, what is it we want? And the thing she said is that he hears us asking for accountability. Whoever is managing the service, running the service, we want accountability. We want to know what's going on and how things operate. And every one of these is, every one of us will have a little different definition of accountability. I thought about trying to write those down. I said, oh, great, that would, maybe I'll know it when I see it, but community ownership, or at least a perception that the community has ownership of this operation, and accountability connects with that as well, because we know what's going on, but it is part of us, and that's what we have today, and we don't want to lose that. Financial stability, stabilized community subsidies, which relates to financial stability. It means we know where our costs are going. We know what we have to do to manage our costs. Stabilized community subsidies, it's not gonna keep going up everywhere. We wanna really be able to stop this acceleration of the, or at least know what it is, but we have to get it to the level we need, and then wanna try to maintain it there. I think that's what he was hearing us say, or paraphrasing our issues, as well as high employee engagement. We want all of our staff to really be involved in the community and to be perceived that way. So this was, kind of came out of this. That's a starting point of us trying, perhaps, this is something we could work on to say, this is what we want.
This, to me, is a place to start on the strategic planning, and then defining what we mean by all of these terms. Because, yes, accountability may mean something to one person and something a little different to another, and we need to make sure that we all have the same concept in mind, and with all of these.
Yeah. So no matter the kind of operation we have, whatever the structure is, these are the things that are important. And so we want to use these as measures, and I agree, it could be really kind of the core of the strategic plan. These are our values, these are our goals, our objectives. So we build it around whatever plan it is, whatever operation we have, is built around these core values. And I think some of them are in the current strategic plan, but not all of them. They're not addressed as to how you're going to get there, or what's the plan. That's what the strategic plan should be doing, helping us do.
So this list is your takeaway from that conversation with Aaron?
Yeah, that's that takeaway, as well as, there's lots of ideas about how they do things, and there's some possibilities that we could tap into some of their resources. It's not a closed, one way is the highway kind of situation. So it's an impressive organization. It really is. They do a heck of a job, and their facility is incredible. It was a real eye opener to say, and how did they get there? They started with 3 small organizations getting together and deciding that they couldn't survive by themselves. So it was very good, and the attitude of all the people that we met was just incredible. I mean, you get the high employee engagement, you get the community outreach is very solid.
Now, they have some big donors that are helping out with things as well, so that needs to be brought up as well. So, any other questions about it?
It is an advantage of the nonprofit model, is that if you're a 501c3, you can do fundraising.
So, any other items for discussion only? Future agenda items? Keep everything on the agenda? Right, we've really got to focus on getting the strategic plan and getting finding the consultant. So if anybody's got ideas on that, send them to Joanne, and so that she can forward things to us. Okay, next meeting time and date? So what night of the week works best now?
June 12th?
June 12th?
Not the second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday's bad?
We don't have anything scheduled that month, so June 12th would actually work.
Okay. Isn't that your critical case review?
Yeah, that would be.
June 12th, I've got a Public Utilities Commission.
June 19th?
13th?
19th is open for me.
Then, okay, yeah, because the 13th isn't going to work for you, Brandon. You're still in your class, aren't you?
Oh, that's
Yeah, that'll
right.
be the last night.
Oh, okay.
How about
yeah,
the 19th?
19th works.
19th?
Elkin?
I won't be here, but that's okay.
Bill?
If it works for everybody
Yeah,
else.
works for me.
Jim?
It's open.
Okay, so the 19th at 6:30?
Joe, you got Ben coming then?
I don't know what Ben's schedule is, and he's in Texas now, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ben said that he's in his travel season now.
6:30?
6:30.
How about John? Will he be around then? Do we know?
What did he say? Was he, I think he said like but yeah,
Joanne, could you reach out to him specifically and
and then let us know, because we need to have him.
Sure.
And then we'll see if there are other dates that might work. With the 20th is. What about Monday the 11th? Well, it's gonna depend, he might not be available that week. Why don't you just see whether he's
Seems like
available?
he travels the first part of the month.
And then like the middle of the month or something.
Yes.
We're
I think
changing the date
because we were doing the 2nd and 4th,
I think they're talking about
and that seemed to work for him.
John Trimble.
So,
I'll see.
Reach out to him and see, yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
yeah,
Oh, sure.
okay.
Okay, watch it.
Anything else?
Motion adjourned?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Joe?